the city.
Good evening, and thank you for those warm words of welcome.
Pleasure having you this evening, Dr. Tara.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Minister, it's a pleasure to have you in this program. I never met you personally, but I had a special relationship with your dad. You might not know that, but every time he comes visit America, he got to beg me to go back and work with them. But I was fully settled here, so I had to decline every time. As a matter of fact, when he passed away, I asked Pandit Ramerton to drop by a mom to collect some papers where I did a nice story on him that was published over here in New York. Um, so it's a pleasure to have you. I know you have a very busy ministry. One of the things that I've been advocating is more resources to social issues in Guyana. And there's a heavy emphasis on economic indicators, economic development, but socially we are not moving forward, I feel. And you have a very challenging, I think that the last time I checked, you have about 9% or 10% of the total budget or less. I think I read it somewhere there, but we are not going to, based on your response, that's how we can ask for clarifications. And the host said, this program is ready to get at the evidence, the facts. We are not interested in propaganda and these things. That's why our program is a bit different from others. And from the facts and the data, we can make informed judgment and opinions. So I now open the floor, but I just want to raise with you a very important. I know you are not in charge of the suicide, but the hotline, I think, fall under your portfolio. And in September last year, there's a young physics teacher who committed suicide. The he had called in on the hotline apparently 4 a.m. in the morning. Nobody was there, but he did leave a message on a phone number. But by the time the people at the hotline responded, that's a bit too late. He had already committed suicide. I'm sure you're aware of that. But the question arose, is the hotline manned 24 hours or just during the day period?
Well, thank you very much for having me on your program and for sharing those very kind sentiments about my father, and also for reaching out to me for clarity and insight into the programs offered by the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security. And to answer your first question, the suicide hotline does not fall under the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security. It falls under the Ministry of Health. But I will say, when I heard of the young man's passing, although I didn't know him, it hit me very hard because every life is a very precious one. And to see someone who was bright from all accounts and someone who was well liked, well loved by his peers and people within his community and within his circle, and to read about the impact he has had on their life, and to know that at such a young age, he thought that he could have perhaps gone to the end of his problems by committing suicide was very, very disturbing.
Mhm.
What I do know is that the suicide hotline is manned 24 hours, and it is extremely, extremely unfortunate. And I can even say unacceptable too, that that call that he made was not answered. As you know, in 2016, I did pilot a motion in Parliament where I asked, when we were in opposition, for the decriminalization of suicide. And I made a number of recommendations at that point, because at the time in the country, there were spates of suicides happening across many of the regions. And it was of great concern to me personally that this was going unabated. And because I've had an interest in this for a long time, started, in addition to the motion in Parliament, taking outreaches to various communities, especially in Region 6 and 2, that had the highest rate of suicide, incidence of suicide at that time. And we took large teams of psychologists, social workers, counselors, and engaged the community. And after some time, it abated, but it is still something that is very entrenched in our country, in our community. And like you, I do believe that there are so many things that we can do. Things have already started, like with the hotline and with the offer of counseling. The legislation will be looked at very soon on the floors in Parliament. So, those are some of the things that are
Mhm.
happening to tackle the issue of suicide. So, I just wanted to offer that, even though it does not fall directly under the
Yeah.
Ministry of Human Services and
No,
Social Security.
I'm glad that you clarified that because the impression of this family was the hotline was run by your ministry. I'm glad you clarified that.
Not at all.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, since you're mentioning hotlines, the one that is run by the Ministry of Human Services is the 914 hotline, which was launched very early in 2021 to tackle domestic violence.
Okay, thank you. Now, there's another bit of concern by some people. I don't. You can comment on this or pass on it, but the UG Foundation have gotten DDL in the sponsorship of a particular variety of alcohol. And we know alcohol has done so much damage and destruction to family apart from medical cirrhosis of the liver and all other things. And I I read an article where somebody was expressing grave concern about it. I myself am not too. I don't know whether it is the right thing for UG at Academic Foundation in literally what they're doing promoting alcohol drinking, and especially in Guyana where the consumption is so high with all the deleterious negative social impacts. If you want to comment on that, or you can pass on it.
Well,
I know.
I think that decision would have been taken by the University of Ghana, and I wasn't privy to the reasons why. But on the subject of alcohol, I will say that I'm perhaps one of the best known advocates against alcohol abuse, and always one who, for a long time, for many years before I became a minister, many, many years, who would have been speaking out very clearly and emphatically about the damage that alcohol wreaks on communities all the way down to the family unit, especially when people abuse alcohol. There are so many triggers, true, as to why they do, but there are also so many things and repercussions and consequences that emanate from the alcohol abuse that causes instability in families, leads to violence, leads to drunk driving, people dying from accidents. There's so many consequences. So I've always been a firm and passionate advocate against alcohol abuse. And the world took notice about 6, 7 years ago when the WHO spoke about the impact of alcohol abuse. But in Guyana, I was tirelessly campaigning against its abuse and also to have controls in certain areas, especially when it comes to minors accessing alcohol so easily in an unregulated. Our legislation is a very progressive and strong one. And recently in Parliament, we did do an amendment to that legislation. So it has to do with enforcement. It also has to do with looking at how accessible alcohol is when it comes to things like ad hoc events and how easily children and young people can purchase. So there are many, many things that need to be looked at when it comes to alcohol and its impact
Mm,
on the community at large. So while I wouldn't directly comment on what prompted that, I will say this much.
okay, thank you. Now, my final question before I pass you on to Dr. Vishnu and Mahendra is I know a lot of people have been complaining about difficulty in getting the old age pension.
Mm.
And if you can enlighten us about that, what developed, I know you all have done a lot of outreach and get as many people registered, etc. But still, up to last week, I get a call from somebody who said they went there, and up to now, after several months, they can't get it resolved. So if you can elaborate on that a bit or clarify the situation for viewers.
So I'm glad you're asking this question because the issue of old age pension is one that I actually spoke about when I was sworn in as a minister. And I said that would be one of the areas that I would tackle very soon. And I did. And there are several things that would have happened from then to now. One of which would be the long lines people face at the post offices. You won't see that easily now across Guyana, because what I would have worked very hard on with the team at the Ministry of Human Services would have been alternate venues. So now people don't have to line up on the first day to get their pension. They can get pension any day of the month. That's one. Two, there are alternate venues to the post office, including MoneyGram, Western Union. Three, there is also the option of having the pension paid directly to the bank account, which means your old age pension is within your bank account within the first 5 days of every month, which means you don't even need a book. You only have to apply for this service. Four, there's a direct delivery system where the ministry would go into remote and rural areas, including in the hinterland, and directly deliver to pensioners their pension. And also, we would have started again very early when I came in too, the whole movement of taking the pension directly to persons who we consider shut in pensioners. These are people who might be bedridden or blind. So the alternate venue thing is a very popular one. I'm currently in discussion with one of the agencies so that we can use MMG, which again would reduce people having to line up or to go very far from where they live. In addition to that, government has been incrementally increasing the pension in accordance with a manifesto promise, and in 2 years we have given the largest increase to pensioners. However, I always believe there is room for more, and as such, we will continue to do that until hopefully we can surpass what we promised. I also want to say, with regard to the life certificate for people who want their pension, well, pension, the old age pension in particular, is distinct from the NIS pension system, which falls under the Ministry of Finance. So I'm not quite sure which one you're speaking of, but that is a little different and has its own challenges.
Okay, this person specifically was referring to a
But for
NIS pension.
Right. So old age pension is not means tested, which means when someone gets to be 65 years old, they can get old age pension.
Yeah.
So it's a straightforward process. And last year, for the first time, pensioners got their books very, very early in the year. By September, October, 85% of the pensioners across the country had gotten their pension books. That's never happened before. Usually people have a wild run around for their pension books and it goes, but that's not happening anymore. We've started the early delivery system. And last year, we also, in addition to giving the pension vouchers, there was an additional voucher of $25,000 that all pensioners benefited from. So those are just some of the areas that we have worked on when it comes to pension. And I'm not satisfied with what we're doing, because I always believe one has to be objective and one has to be one's own objective critique, if I put it that way, or critic, so that you can always improve. And that's what we're doing. When we hear of any complaint, any concern, I try to look at it from all angles to see how we can do it better. Ideally, I would like to shorten the time it takes for people to, if they're outside of the pension distribution phase, because people apply at different times. So when I say people are getting their books early, it is directly referring to people who are already on our systems. But for new pensioners, I want to keep shortening that time as much as possible so that the process becomes very, very efficient. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you very much. Now I'll pass you on to
You're
Dr. Vishnu. You have a question for Dr. Vindhya.
I do. Thank you. Thank you. Namaste. Good evening, Minister Dr. Vindhya Persaud. Good to see you again, although not live, as I often do in Guyana at various functions. The question I have is, I wanted, well, actually, a request, if you could clarify for the viewers here in the diaspora as well as in Guyana, what's the standard amount of the given to pensioners?
Well, that has been increased, and we are now at $30,000, and it would have moved up, and we gave pensioners an additional $25,000.
So now they're getting 55.
No, the
No, 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 no,
25,000 is a
no. That
one.
yes, the monthly
Oh,
payment, and
okay.
then
I
yes,
got
yes.
you. Right,
So
right,
so
right.
it has really increased, from where it was when we came into office. So we have significantly increased the pension in just 2 years compared to, let's say the last government over 5 years. What we have increased to in 2 years is significantly more than they would have done in 5 years. But as I'm saying, we did have a manifesto promise, and the government is working to continuously increase the pension for old age pensioners until we hit that number, or maybe it could be more. Let's wait and see.
Mm.
Okay, well, I hope it is more, and sooner rather than later, because
I agree.
inflation
I I
inflation
am
has been a killer in
I'm
recent.
in accord. I'm in accord with you.
This, you
Okay,
have another question?
yes. Actually, really a comment. I was wondering, in light of domestic violence, self-inflicted violence via suicide, road rage, and vehicular violence, which has been going up steadily. I wonder if you could indicate what steps are being taken with any of your colleagues to address these three main forms of violence in Guyana.
So let's start with vehicular accidents. I know the president has made an announcement that there will be tougher measures, and there has been a harsh look at the drunk driving in particular. And there would have been more persons who would have been taken into the police stations, who would have been charged for drunk driving or driving under the influence. As I mentioned, the legislation was also looked at, and there are measures whereby when people go into bars and so on to drink, they can only drink so much. The keys will be removed from them. They'll be encouraged to take a cab and that kind of thing. And I think it's good because that those measures are actually in other countries like the UK and Canada, to name two, and probably in many other countries. But this is what is required: being able to widespread look at how we can practically look at ensuring that people who are driving under the influence are not going out there to endanger their lives and more so other people's lives. This culture of driving under the influence has been an old one, and we have seen the accidents that emanate, some horribly, horribly devastating accidents where so many lives are lost, and in a smash up you might have children and women and all of this thing. So we have to keep consistently moving on this and consistently ensuring that the law is really enforced at every level, and that might be a bit challenging, but I think with this consistency and this constant looking at it and this constant attention, we will get there. With regard to self-harm, I believe that the Ministry of Health, when it rolls out its program to do with the legislation, they will also be rolling out a countrywide program. There will be a task force that is set up to consider suicide. So, those are some of the things that will happen. But as always, I believe mental health plays a role in people getting to the point of suicide. And with mental health, people can move very easily into depression. The new mental health bill was just enacted in Parliament, so that has a number of measures too that will be implemented within the health sector. And when those measures are implemented, they will come with strong programs to tackle the issue of mental health and directly or indirectly suicide. And finally, with violence. Now, that's a very big one. And I will say that right now, with the efforts over 2 years, Guyana is leading in the region on what we would have implemented to tackle violence, whether you consider it domestic violence or gender based violence. So I'll start from the legislation. Right now, we would have prepared a first draft of a new piece of legislation to replace the current one. And it's going to move from being called domestic violence to family and domestic violence. Act, simply because we are considering newer forms of violence within that. That is out on our website, and that's out in the public domain for national consultation and input before we finalize the legislation to be presented in Parliament. Secondly, the big thing that was launched very early in 2021, which again is one of its kind in our region, is the 914 hotline. This is a toll free 24-hour hotline. And in addition to the English speaking operators, we also have Spanish speaking operators to cater for persons who speak Spanish to complement the hotline, where we would have seen a number of reports coming in. So this has led to increased reporting and is one of the most valuable entry points into our interventional type program. I would have launched something called the iMatter app. Again, the first and only one of its kind in the region. And I also think further afield, iMatter app has within it all the resources to do with domestic violence, and in in within that you have where there are support avenues, whether it's going for counseling, whether it's finding a site nearby that offers some help or support or assistance. But importantly, in the iMatter app, there is a panic button that links directly to 914. We've just, as in yesterday, launched the QR code. So we have posters and banners that are going to be all over the country, so people can just scan the QR code and have this app on their phone. I'm working also with the telephone companies to make this app work offline. Now, that's just reporting. In addition to that, a program called the Survivors Advocate Program has been launched, also launched last year. And what this does is provide anyone experiencing domestic violence with someone to take them from the point of reporting all the way to the conclusion of their case, which leads to legal recourse. Because I fully understand that sometimes people are not aware of how to report, where to go, what to do, or sometimes they're just terrified. So that program has been working well, and it is within our plans to expand it and have more survivors advocates right across the country. To complement the Survivor Advocate program, there is the Survival Kit. I know fully well that when people leave a violent situation, sometimes they have nothing to leave with. So we have devised a kit filled with all essentials to tide them over for 2 weeks to a month. Added to that, a couple of weeks ago, I launched a voucher called SAFE. SAFE meaning stop abuse, feel empowered. So every person who has the survival kit or who needs something to tide them over when leaving gets a $15,000 voucher. We did this in partnership with Massey, and I'm hoping other companies come on board because this is necessary when women take, or men too, take that bold step to come out of a very violent situation. In addition to that, shelter is pivotal in ensuring that someone who escapes a violent situation has a sanctuary, has a safe haven. So we have a number of partnerships, yes, with various NGOs and entities who provide shelter, but as part of government's program, we are expanding our shelters across the country, and we will be having more shelters in a few of the regions so that we have more space to cater for those persons leaving violent situations. In addition to that, I also know that people would like to have legal recourse. And so I launched a program called the Legal Pro Bono Initiative. This ties in with government's promise to expand legal avenues for people with who are experiencing domestic violence. As you know, government right now gives a hefty subvention to legal aid and help and shelter to provide both shelter and legal recourse. The Legal Pro Bono Initiative, which is operated directly from the Ministry of Human Services, is an initiative that brings the Guyana Bar Association in partnership with the ministry. And so 500 persons experiencing domestic violence will have some of the best legal minds at their disposal to do their cases at no cost. One of the biggest bugbears in fighting and tackling domestic violence and child abuse and elder abuse has always been the police and how they deal with people. So, an initiative launched also last year is the Cop Squad initiative. This one I conceptualize looking at 2,000 policemen. So it's called Cop Squad 2000 initiative, training 2,000 policemen in the force, and we've completed training 1,600 of those. One, to deal in a more professional way with those who make reports. Two, to write good case reports. Three, to have insight and knowledge of the legislation. Four, to be able, wherever they are, to exercise best practice when dealing with any case of domestic violence. And the third component, which to me is the most important component, is that we have feedback from public so that when they go to police station, however they're treated, whatever the experience is, we can have that analysis done. So the impact analysis of what we would have done to determine how best to move forward with regard to every element that constitutes our comprehensive response to domestic violence. I also launched the CAN network, which is the Community Advocates Network, bringing the community to work directly with the ministry. And so very soon we will be rolling out the training program, working to train trainers within every community and peer educators within every community and first responders within every community so that we can have this concerted collective effort to tackle domestic violence. I think I've said a mouthful, so I'll stop in case you wanted to ask
No,
me
no,
anything else.
that is very important, because most of us are not aware of the various things you're doing in the ministry. Now I pass you on to Mahendra. He's one of the new rising stars in our community. So Mahendra, over to you and the minister.
Sure. Thanks, Dr. Tara. Good night, Dr. Vindhya Persaud. It's a
Good
pleasure
night.
having you on the program, and it's a pleasure having the opportunity to ask you a few questions. And I know that the task at hand in your ministry is very, very important to the fabric of our country, especially a country that is now on the global stage with all of the influx of interest from all corners of the world. I One question regarding the old age pension. As you would know, most of or a lot of the pensioners are perhaps in the diaspora. And one
Mhm.
of the challenge some of them have is regarding the support. If they have an inquiry or a problem, they might not have the leisure to connect directly with the ministry in Guyana. I know that we have support bases here in the consulate and various other agencies, but what currently is in place for pensioners in the diaspora if they have an issue, how to get that resolved without reaching directly to the ministry?
Okay, so for NIS, although it's being dealt with by the Ministry of Finance, I know they have put aside a desk for anyone, which would mean they have a number. With regard to the ministry, we have WhatsApp numbers and we also have an email address. I wish I could share it, but I don't remember it out of my head. But that is there, and those numbers are posted on our Facebook page and our website. So if they would like to make contact with us, it's as simple as that.
Next
Understood.
question.
Understood. You spoke about the social sort of challenges our society have with respect to mental health and all of these various issues. The president has a team of One Guyana. I know that it's an important phase in our country's maybe revitalization of changing the mindset of our people and on our population. Can you speak to specific initiatives that your ministry is engaging with or on to change maybe the way our society views and look at various issues? Because while all of these programs are in place, I think the execution and how society perceives them and interpret them and the mindset approach that they have around it, it's going to be critical for them to be successful or not.
Okay, so for us to have a change in mindset, there must be inclusivity. And I think the government as a whole has been very focused on inclusivity at every step and in every sector and in all programs. The Ministry of Human Services and Social Security is no different, ensuring that all people are part of whatever we do. So, which means our programs, when they're regional, it means literally that there's access by all. And there's some very good initiatives that would have directly tapped into varying populations for them to understand that for us to really progress, for us to make the kind of imprint that we want to not only nationally but globally, we must work in tandem with each other as a team, and we must do so with national pride, ensuring that whatever we do and however we present ourselves, we do so where the standard is always excellent, and we do so in a united fashion. And I think more and more I'm seeing young people and people right across the country getting into that mindset where we must always do everything conscious of the impact it would have on the image of our country, on the fabric of our country, in that whatever we do impacts on each other. So, some of the programs that I would say is changing the way not only people view themselves, but also changing their circumstances include the WIN program, the Women's Innovation Investment Network program. This is a program that speaks directly to women. While I would say exclusively, I can't say that because we have never turned away men who wanted to join this program. And this program is a free training program that is targeting women of all ages, all backgrounds, which includes their academic background, whether they have one or not, and placing them on a firm foothold where they are able to access diverse training opportunities and also to utilize those opportunities for financial empowerment, which leads to confidence being engendered and increased self esteem, and also gives them an opportunity to reach and exceed way beyond perhaps they thought they could possibly do so. And this is changing the way they go back to their homes armed with knowledge, armed with the kind of empowerment that we want to see women take to their families, because families are the most important units in a community. And if we have stable families, then we will eventually have the kind of dynamic communities that we want to have. We will have women embodying the kind of equality and equity that we need to see in our country. So the WIN program, although it's focused on upskilling and technical vocational training, has built into it core components that deal with legislation, empowerment, that deals with life skills, and all of those things. To date, we would have trained in 2021. This is a brand new program, 2,170 women right across our country in various areas like professional care, child care, elder care, patient care, and also graphic designs, taking them out of the traditional mold of what they usually do and exposing them to what is out there. So, really moving our women into understanding the whole concept of gender equality. And when they are able to do that, that impacts on their children, especially the girls who are coming up after them. This year, we would have had 10,000 applications for the WIN program, and we will be at the end of the year easily able to train close to 7,000 of those women in every region. It means too that we are taking women out of their homes where necessary and placing them in jobs, but more importantly, giving them the opportunity to develop micro enterprise and entrepreneurial type of initiatives. Second to the WIN program is the Young Influencers program, again, a brand new program that I introduced. And this is bringing young people from all across the country. If you're hearing noise in the background, I'm at the stadium at the launch of the Amerindian Heritage Month. So please excuse me. And the Young Influencer program brings 30 young people this year, last year, 25 young people from every region together to discuss issues affecting young people, to tackle the very sometimes difficult issues that we want to speak of, whether it has to do with race, religion, social ills, social issues, and coming up with solutions, coming up with creative campaigns to tackle those issues. The Young Influencers program is so highly successful that this batch of young influencers would have been recognized by so many entities locally and internationally. They would have presented some of them at the UN. And so this is our thrust to target the fertile young minds of Guyana so that they think with that one Guyana foremost in their mind, understanding the concept of unity, harmonious coexistence, all of these things that are so necessary. The third area or the third initiative that I launched was the Support and Heal Network. This has brought together 35 faith based organizations. These organizations work very closely with the ministry and they're very diverse in nature. They work in their communities. We have been training them all the time as trainers, and they are equipped with knowledge in things like conflict resolution, mediation, anger management, and a slew of other areas which they could now take back into their captive audiences, into their communities to get the impact that I would like to see, which essentially is bringing people closer together and eradicating the root causes of some of the social ills. And those are just a few. I just shared a few of
Yeah.
what's happening.
Thank you very much. How many senior homes are under your ministry now?
So we have the Palms, which is the only senior home under the Ministry of Human Services, but there is the night shelter that caters for the homeless and indigent. The Palms would usually accept people 65 years and over. We do have other senior homes that we oversight, but we do not directly manage.
Okay. What about the Child Protection Agency?
What about it?
The
What would you
Child
like to know?
Protection Agency. I was reading a report about some official or the agency was not handling some kind type of abuse properly, and these things. These are regular reports that come out. We have been
So the
hearing.
child Okay, so the Child Care and Protection Agency is responsible for all children across the country. This agency deals with homes. We have state institutions or i- institutions that deal with placement of children, and we have partnership with other NGO or FBO owned orphanages or child institutions that we oversight. To manage those, we have a child visiting committee, which I started this year, to with comprised of civil society that deals with all the cases that are found within the homes. In other words, they go, they look at the homes, they see the conditions, they make the report directly to me. Based on that report, recommendations are made so that all the homes, whether state or not, could improve. In a similar manner, we would have launched the Every Child Safe campaign, and each word is carefully chosen, every child, and safety being paramount to tackle cases of domestic violence, child abuse. And we are focused on ensuring that every child has a safe space and also has the right representation by the Child Care and Protection Agency. From time to time, yes, there are reports of things not happening the way they should, and I have taken all of these reports on board. I deal with it immediately and seriously, and where there are loopholes or gaps within the Child Care and Protection Agency, I address them. But I do so very conscious too that we have a small complement of officers. I would like to have more. And also, I look at the entire case holistically and to see where the pitfalls are. Is it at the end of the police where they're supposed to intervene? Is it that maybe people are not happy because things didn't go their way? So there are many things within any case. But my bottom line is, if any child is abused, any child is raped, any child is treated in a way which their dignity and their person is violated, anyone doing that should face the full force of the law. I have no apologies for saying that. And whatever it takes to get the Child Care and Protection Agency into a more efficient mode will be done. And it's not something that can happen overnight, but I have been with the team at the ministry consistently working at every level. That's why the Every Child Safe campaign was launched. And this is primarily to work with communities to let people know what child abuse is. Sometimes people do not know, do not report. So we have seen an increase in reporting since we have started the campaigns on child abuse. We have seen more responsiveness from the Child Care and Protection Agency. How I feel, you would be disturbed by the sheer numbers of cases of child abuse. And the reality is that people abuse children. And more, we have to keep educating them, letting them know that it is a crime. And more, we have to keep taking children into the homes for safety. And more, we have to keep pushing so that there is more prosecution. To effect that, the child advocacy centers have been set up across the country where children give forensic interviews. In that, they tell their story only once in a protected environment to all of the people who need to hear it, which includes the policemen. Then that is taken and should make its way to the court. I will not tell you that the system is perfect. I will not tell you that everything is perfection. But what I will tell you is that we're working very hard to improve what is happening at present.
Thank you. The people with disabilities now, I know you have special programs for them. If you can please enlighten us about that.
Sure. So in 2020, when I came into office, like the seniors, I also right away started looking at persons living with disabilities. And I interfaced with many NGOs and also the National Commission on Disability. And coming out of that discussion, I wanted to start programs that give direct support to persons living with disabilities and the various disabilities. So worked very early with the Deaf Association of Guyana, and we did a series of PSAs where people spoke about how it felt in sign language to be in the deaf community and how people should perceive them and not exclude them. So that went out there. We also did some books to teach people how to use communication tools to work closely with those persons who were deaf. We followed a young girl who was a champion chess player for a day who was deaf so that people understood the challenges of persons who are deaf and their wish to be treated kindly and respectfully. Then we also worked on the more practical aspect of things where currently the ministry is providing free support aids. We've been doing that since I got there, but it has been amplified. We provide free wheelchairs, walkers, white canes, hearing aids, anything that any person who's living with a disability would require. We also would provide, and it's a recent announcement by me, Pampers. So we have created a Pampers Bank, and I'm hoping more companies come on board to contribute to that, but we're still doing it. We have also, since last year, started a free training program for persons living with disability. The target for this year is to train 600 persons living with disabilities in diverse areas, like we did last year, which includes graphic designs, social media marketing, mobility, ICT, a number garment construction, and the response has been excellent. People who never had access to any training, they've been trained. They're looking forward to how they can start their own micro enterprise. They're looking forward to how they can gain employment. And on the issue of employment, I would have written to the private sector. I would have written to my own colleagues in public sector to encourage employment, and of course with equal pay for work done, so that those who are in the community of persons living with disabilities, they can have equal opportunities, equal access. I'd have written to my colleague to ensure too that ramps and things are put in place in as many new buildings, all the new buildings, and as many older buildings as possible, so the access is improved. And also, right now, we are working on distributing $100,000 one-off cash grant to every child living with a disability across the length and breadth of Guyana. We should be able to touch the lives of, I would say, over 6,000 children. And that would be, by definition, 18 years and below. I've also made the public assistance easier as of July, because what I noticed is that persons would have had to apply and reapply and go before the board and do several medicals. That's all been removed. One medical, one application. That's it. You get public assistance automatically if you're living with a disability, and that only stops when you hit your pensionable years, because our legislation precludes persons from obtaining two means of social assistance from government.
Uh,
Wow.
Makes
Thank
sense.
you.
That's even a quick question. Coming from a not-for-profit background, that's my profession here in the U.S. With respect of providing social services to members of society with all of these various challenges, I am pretty sure your ministry and the government at large do provide subventions and grants to various NGOs to provide, maybe in support of your ministry, these
Hmm.
services. But
Yeah.
how is the ministry thinking to incentivize major corporations, given Guyana has garnered this interest around its oil wealth? Is the ministry and the government thinking about programs to incentivize investment in these areas where, for example, a corporation made a donation? Is there a tax certification?
Yes, there is such a thing. There is such a thing. And once people do that, they can tap into that as well. We have been partnering with companies who would have made donations. Like, we have something every year for Christmas called the Wish Upon a Star initiative, where we go across the country and children write into us. These are special needs children, children living with disabilities or special needs. And companies have come on board as part of their CSR. But if companies want to make larger investments, they want to do more, they are more than welcome to do it. In fact, one of the things I didn't mention is that we are currently constructing an institute for persons living with with disabilities that should be open in about 2 to 3 months, probably two. We are almost complete with that, and that will be the hub for all training for persons living with disabilities. And companies can come on board to provide equipment, they can come on board to provide training. They can come, companies are coming on board to help, to support, to provide things like wheelchairs. The Rotary has come on board. So yes, there are those incentivized opportunities for people, and I'm sure once companies broach with us what it is that they are looking for, I can make that recommendation further. But yes, I would like to encourage CSRs more, and especially tapping into vulnerable population type programs so that we could do much more.
Dr. Vish, you
Yeah,
have a final
yeah,
question?
yeah, Minister, you have a most impressive list of social programs to address social problems that the country faces. I don't have statistics, but consciously or subconsciously or unconsciously, we tend, well, government or people generally tend to focus on urban centers. I don't know the statistics in terms of social problems, rural versus urban, rural versus Georgetown. I did notice and hear you say that the state has one senior citizens center, which I think is urban or urban centered, Georgetown centered. I was just wondering if efforts would be made to have some of these institutions or locations or agencies in the rural and hinterland locations as well.
Yes, absolutely. I can tell you for people living with disabilities, not right now, the institution is being built on the East Coast. I know the First Lady has just established one where persons living with disabilities would be trained in business projects. That's in Region 6. And we do have the Hugo Chavez Center, which will be focused on drug rehab. That's in Region 5. And with regard to elders, it is my deep desire, as you would have mentioned, to have more of these in other parts of the country, in other regions. And we do have shelters coming on board, some this year, some next year, that will be in places like Region 1 and Region 7 to start with. So it's happening, it's mushrooming, but in addition to the state, we also are in partnership with a lot of, when I say partnership, people have some of these in other parts of the country, and the state has the responsibility to ensure that they adhere to minimum standards and to oversight these so that they are doing, what they ought to do with regard to care of senior citizens. And to make this a seamless transition, we are going to be starting things like the daycare, night care program. Those are brand new concepts to many people in the region also, because when I posited about night care, people said, what was that? And I was in Latin America. And so there are many creative ideas that will come out, and hopefully in the shortest frame of time we can get those in all of the regions. But we have been training personnel so that in all of the regions we will have people who can work within those institutions when they do happen. As you know, Ministry of Health is going to be doing the hospital project in a lot of the rural regions too. So it's happening. It's happening.
Mhm. All right. Thank you very much, Minister. I'll pass on to our host now. She has three online questions for
Oh,
you.
sure.
So this,
Dr. Vindhya, we see several comments. A lot of people are not satisfied with the response that they've gotten from your ministry. And like everything else, right? We're going to have people who are not happy. But there are some specifics here. That there is one specific one that I want to bring to your attention. And this one is from Amina Singh. Uh, she says that her husband was beaten and she has applied to your ministry for assistance. Uh, and she has not gotten it. She has left her phone number here.
Sure.
So what I
Please share it with me. I'm not sure what assistance she would have applied for. If it is public
disability
assistance,
is what she said.
okay, so I'm assuming it's public assistance. So the way that works is once someone would have applied, that application goes to the local board of guardians, and then that person is approved or not. And if they're not approved, then that application can be taken to the Poor Law Commission for them to review the case. Now, I only in July made an announcement that people with permanent disabilities will not have to go through that process as a policy decision. And so once she would have applied after July, the process will be seamless. Prior to July, it would have had to go through the local board of guardians and the Poor Law Commission. So if you share her number with me, I can have
I
them
will.
check to see where her process is, because I'm not sure when they applied and all of that. But I don't have any problem checking on it.
I will definitely share that with you.
Mhm.
And then there is Jasmine Baldeo says that there is a mother trending on Facebook who has a disabled child
Yes,
and
I
was
know of the case. So
okay.
this case went viral yesterday, and it was erroneously stated that the child was refused any of the cash grant. And I want to
Right.
say very clearly, I've been going to 90% of the distribution sites, and no child has been refused. What has happened in we got the list from the National Commission on Disability of the children who are living with permanent disabilities. When we got to the site, there were some persons who were off the lists, genuine cases. So right away from day one, we started to capture the names of the children who might have registered or even not registered, and they turned up and the name was off the printed list that we got. Remember this thing? We can't just randomly add in people there. This is an IDV project, and this is also one which is open to scrutiny at all times by the auditors who are on site. So, because I don't want any child to be left out, that second list or second lists, I should say, of persons who might have not been on the list for whatever reason, we are compiling those lists, and we very clearly, including I did, and the officers did, and everyone did, we have very clearly told people you will get the cash completed within 4 weeks to make sure that every child who did not get in the first phase, every child and whose parent or guardian turned up there and said, well, we weren't on the list, they will get it. So I want to give that commitment. And I only will say the caveat is that they must have a permanent disability. That list was also presented by the National Commission on Disability. So at no point in time was anyone refused. If someone was omitted from the list, I will say yes, that would have happened. But we dealt with it on spot and will continue to deal with it because I don't want that child from the picture has an obvious disability. We have been trying our best to have some contact information for that parent so we can get to that child. If anyone has it, please share it because we will not only help with the $100,000 cash grant, we will visit the home and see if there's any other help that is required.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your questions. And thank you, Dr. Vindhya. I will now give you some time for your closing remarks. Dr. Vindhya.
I just want to say thank you for having me. I like to think that we are putting the human back into human services. And I also believe that though people may approach this ministry and they may have come from very difficult circumstances, that we will serve with humility, ensuring that the dignity and the rights of all people are respected. I also know that I may want that. And I also know that sometimes not everybody may treat a person the right way, may approach them in the way in which I would like them to approach them in a very simple, very straightforward, genuine way. But I will give the commitment that every day, all the time, people may not know we are trying. I am personally addressing all of these things because I do not believe that people should come to this ministry and be treated in any way that is inappropriate or disrespectful. And every complaint, everything that they raise, I look at it. People may not know that, most, I can't speak for everybody, but many ministers spend many late. We work from Sunday to Sunday, morning to night, and because it is important as a government, as a human being, that we want the best for all the citizens of our country. So there will be more progressive programs, there will be more initiatives, there will be more things that will work in the interest of all people. And I want to give my personal commitment that as much as possible, with my whole being, I would like to see the way in which the Ministry of Human Services is presented. It becomes an efficient, effective body and one that continues to serve with the greatest degree of humility every single person across the length and breadth of Guyana.
Wow. Well said. Well said,
Yeah.
Dr. Vindhya. And I thank you for being here this evening. Thank you to our panel. Um, and thank you to our viewers for all your questions. Again, if there's anyone out there who can share that information with us for the child, the disabled child, I will get that information to Dr. Vindhya. I will also get the number of the woman whose husband needs assistance. I will get all that information to her. So please send it in the comments and we will make sure we take care of you. Until next time, this is the Guyana Dialogue. Have a pleasant evening.
Thank you very much, Dr.
Good
Vindhya.
Thank you very much to
Very,
you and to all the panelists. Thank you and to
very,
everybody watching. Thank you
very
so much. Have a
enlightening
great night.
program. Thank you very much.